Adam Kinzinger joins us now. I guess my first question to you, sir, is this a badge of honor, or how do you look at this censure?
I mean, it's a defining moment for the party, and I think it's a defining moment for every member of the House or the Senate or, you know, any Republican leader. Kevin McCarthy, obviously, who I think asked about this in response, he just, you know, went after Liz and I. Goes to show he is the weakest leader that has ever, frankly, existed in that position. And so I think every member of the media, every citizen, every person out there needs to pin down every Republican and say, do you side with what the RNC did, or do you condemn what they did? And don't let them, trust me, politicians are really good at kind of skirting around that answer. Don't let them on this one. I think it's so defining.
Well, so I'm curious what your thought is about the definition of what happened on January the 6th. People obviously charging in, breaking the law, going into the Capitol, committing crimes, committing sedition, bashing in cops' heads with American flags, jamming cops' heads into doorways, having several cops begging for their lives, thinking about the children they were going to be leaving behind because of the Trump rioters, beating them within inches of death, in what they certainly believe is inches of death. What do you make of a political party in America, one of the two major political parties in America, now calling that legitimate political discourse?
That was obviously a huge surprise to me. I expected that maybe this censure thing was going to happen. And I think the amazing thing about it is, you know, as Ronna McDaniel, who now is out trying to say, well, that's not what we really meant. Sure. OK, so this whole thing is coming from the January 6th committee, which we're doing because of the violence. We would not be having a January 6th committee if it was all, quote unquote, peaceful and legitimate political discourse. For her to now say, well, all we were talking about were the peaceful people, of course, not the rioters. No, trust me, that's not. That may be what you want to have us believe now. But think about this. It goes through the Rules Committee, which is about 200 members of the RNC. It passes unanimously with a voice vote. You know there are members on that committee that disagreed with this, that were too scared to speak up and stop this from happening. That, to me, is as disappointing as anything. There are members of the Republican Party, probably who have been there for 30 years, that are scared to death of the mob, excluding them, that they won't even speak up with. The RNC deserves every aspect of backlash that is going to come down on it. And this is a defining moment in American politics and in the RNC's future. Are you for authoritarianism? Are you against democracy? Or are you going to wake up to that slide and come back to actual democracy again?
I mean, let's be very clear about this. You guys are not investigating peaceful behavior. You guys are not investigating people that went up to the Capitol and didn't break the law. The people that you're investigating and what you're investigating, what the federal government's investigating, are people who violated the law, people who broke the law, people who tried to overturn the election. As Mike Pence basically admitted last week, Donald Trump was an authoritarian who wanted one person to decide who got elected president. So you start putting all of this together. Look at any definition of fascism, and it is a far right-wing, ethno-nationalist movement that uses violence to get what it wants and to undermine democracy. And I'm just curious, based on what the RNC said this past week, as far as their definition of legitimate political discourse, does that not look like the statement of what fascists would say?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you may be smarter on what led up to fascism itself than me. I know it's certainly authoritarianism. I know that certainly the RNC has lost any sense of, and frankly, those that are driving the train have lost any sense of democracy mattering. And what's happened is they've seen these kind of culture wars that have been spewed and stirred, that, you know, by their own kind of Tucker Carlson.
Well, Congressman, let me read you a definition of fascism. Let me just read you the definition. Fascism is a form of far right, authoritarian, language you used, ultranationalism, characterized by dictatorial power or forcible suppression of opposition and a strong regimentation of society and the economy. I mean, it's far-right Trumpism, ultranational, ethno-nationalism, talking about us versus the others, a yearning for authoritarianism, and the use of violence to get there. It sure seems like when they're talking about what happened on January the 6th, beating the hell out of law enforcement officers who would not let them steal an election, seems like we're checking off a lot of boxes there in that definition, aren't we?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, look, I don't know. And maybe there's fascist elements. Maybe it's a being of fascism. Maybe it's authoritarianism. Maybe it's something else. I don't know. I don't know how you want to define it. All I know is I'm out here seeing what is happening, which violates everything the Constitution I believe in is standing for. So I don't care how you define it. I don't care how you argue it. I know that it is a really serious thing that has gone from being kind of a cancerous line within our party to overtaking the entire RNC. And we have to stand up against it. And you're going to have a lot of members of Congress and other leadership positions that sit around, put their head in the sand, pretend like their job is just to win their reelection. None of this ever happened. They have to get pinned down on this. We've got to, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, independent, whatever you are in this country, we have got to stand up and say that truly democracy is threatened. And that's not just, you know, some line we're going to say because it sounds cool. Oh, democracy. No, it is actually truly under threat. And we are on the verge of legitimate political civil war discussion in this country, because I used to say that we'd never get there in this country. Now I look and say we can't even talk to each other anymore. And one party believes nothing but lies. It's a concern.
And there is the RNC's definition of legitimate political discourse. Of
right
course,
there on the
they've
screen.
defended, and let's just cut the BS with people trying to back away from that statement. They have been defending this behavior from the beginning. Ron Johnson, a United States senator who is seeking re-election, said he didn't feel any danger from this crowd at all. He'd feel much more danger from Black Lives Matter. You had another member who actually was standing at the door of the chamber trying to stop people from getting in while guns were drawn, later saying that it was nothing but a group of tourists. And there has been the attempt, Congressman, to define this as a battle between the RNC and AOC, good-thinking, free-thinking conservatives and left-wing socialists, which, of course, looks back past the fact that the Wall Street Journal editorial page has repeatedly condemned this type of behavior, looks past the fact that Mitch McConnell is actually cheering your committee on, saying he wants to hear all of the evidence, even if he opposed the bicameral committee. I mean, there are a lot of Republicans, especially in the Senate and in the right media, that are actually wanting to get to the bottom of this and have said as much. They want to hear what you have to say. So Kevin McCarthy may try to make this, and Jim Jordan may try to make this a left-wing versus right-thing deal. But are you not heartened by the fact that the Wall Street Journal editorial page, Mitch McConnell and others are saying, hey, let's get to the bottom of this chaos, of this anarchy, of this violence?
Look, I think it's a good start. I'm heartened by it. We should be from way further along in people's recognition than we are now. But again, I think we have to look at kind of moments and say, okay, that's good. I think the RNC, and not because it's me and I have I don't get the hurt feelings that Donald Trump gets on a daily basis, by the way. But, the censure of Liz and I think is a bridge that went way too far by the RNC. And I think people are starting to go, wait, hold on a second. Donald Trump literally just admitted to a coup attempt, and you're going to turn your fire on Liz and Adam. And, if me taking those shots is that's one thing. But look, I think this is an insane moment. I think people are slowly starting to speak out, but the fear that exists, that permeates members of my party, particularly elected officials, it really is frightening and incredible. We're going to get to the bottom of this. I mean, I think the January 6th committee, in past history and in future history, will be nothing like it, because we are working together, pulling in the same direction, all to get one thing, which is answers. This is not the left wing against the right wing. This is authoritarianism. You can call it even moments of fascism against democracy. And even as bad as the violence was over the summer during riots, that at no point threatened the self-governance of the United States like the self-governance of the United States was threatened on January 6th. There's no false equivalence, no matter how much the victim and hurt feelings king Donald Trump likes to say that he's always been so ill-fairly treated.
Hey, Congressman Kinzinger, good morning. It's Jonathan Lemire. Let's shift a little bit to your work on the January 6th committee and give us an update on where things stand. Most notably, we've heard from the former president the last week or so, all but confessing on a rally stage and in email statements that, yes, he did try to overturn the election. Tell us how that's factoring into the committee's work. And also, what do you want to see from the Department of Justice right now, considering the criminal referrals that have already been referred over?
Well, let me start with the DOJ. All we can do is provide information, particularly in Mark Meadows' case. He violated a subpoena. Congress has the same subpoena authority as a court, but we don't enforce our own. We rely on DOJ to do that. I certainly hope they criminally charge Mark Meadows with contempt, as we have charged him with in the House. I think any of the information the DOJ sees that leads to a broader conspiracy or anything leading even all the way up to the top, they should take to a court or to a grand jury. Obviously, that is not our focus as anything criminal. It's just getting answers to the American people and defending the institution. And I think we're making an extreme amount of progress. I mean, I think we're getting some real answers. The problem is we need to produce a report by the summer. I think that report is going to be pretty fulsome. We'll have hearings at points. The question is, though, are there people that want to hear it? Is this constant leak of information out of the committee or new information that may even be done by some of the Trump folks designed so that, I mean, he's basically admitting to a coup every day, and we take a yawn and go focus on, the latest cancel culture issue on The View or something. And I think this is a big deal where you look at this and go, Donald Trump admitted to a coup d'etat attempt. If you'd have told me that 10 years ago, I'd have been like, no way, not in America. We have to keep that outrage fresh every day.
Congressman Donnie Deutsch, I always wonder, you and Liz Cheney pretty much standing alone, and the hundreds of other Republican congressmen and women, do you ever talk to them personally off the record and say, guys, you know the truth. You're a bright person. You're educated. You see what I saw. You're not dumb. Do they just look at you and go, well, we want to keep our job? Do they? I mean, what happens behind the scenes? I always wonder, because you're sitting next to these people and you're eating with them and you're dining with them. So what is their explanation to you personally off the record when you talk to them?
It's a really good question because it can be any number of things. So if it's somebody that I know isn't like crazy, right, a normal person, you'll hear them say, well, look, I just have to win my primary because if it's not me, trust me, the guy I'm running against, he's really bad. And I'm like, okay, great. But, at some point you have to stand up. Some of them it's, hey, you have to quit trying to tell me how to do my job. You'll get that occasionally. If I ask somebody, for instance, if they've even tweeted anything or made a statement at all in opposition to what Donald Trump said, where he said, I tried to get, Mike Pence to overthrow the election. Have you said anything? Hey, I get it. I just don't want to get in a Twitter war out there, or I'm a local person. I focus on local issues. Look, again, I can't begrudge anybody how they do their job. Everybody's got their responsibility. But there is a moment, and this is that moment, at which if you don't stand up, you are part of the problem. You are part of the problem. Your silence is complicity. And that's what we're dealing with right now. It is so egregious. We are in such a dangerous position. But I'll tell you, every time I talk to anybody like that, I just walk away disappointed, a little angry, and just blown away that, my friends don't have a red line they won't cross.
All right. Congressman Adam Kinzinger, thank you very, very much for coming on the show.